you doing? Just going to start off this review by saying that this is not going to be like my other reviews on my Instagram page where I do pros, cons, and then the review rating. This is just going to be substance of what I liked or didn't like about the movie. Not for this movie in particular, but for the reviews from now on. And there's going to be no overall rating at the end, because I found that when there's a number, a letter, or a star at the end of each review, people kind of either skip to the end or they fixate on the variable that people use, and that kind of takes away not only from the hard work that goes into writing the review, but how I feel about the movie in general. Because when I say that a movie has 10 or a 6 or whatever the fuck number, it's really hard to condense how I feel about a movie into a number. I've realized after doing it for a fucking year. So yeah, just letting you know. 1917, directed by Sam Mendes, is the story of a pair of young British soldiers in the First World War tasked with an impossible mission. They've got to deliver a message by trekking miles across the German front line that could save 1,600 men from a bloody massacre. Starring Dean Charles Chapman and George McKay as Lance Corporals Blake and Schofield, along with a smattering of other incredible actors in relatively small parts, this war epic wrings you of all your emotional energy by the end of its 2 hours. I was really excited to see this movie when I first heard about it, because it's a movie that takes place during World War I. And most war movies take place during World War II, Vietnam, or post 9/11. And while those movies are neither good nor bad, who cares right now, the pond of that becomes saturated after a while. And it's interesting to go from those time periods to this time period, because it's not discussed enough, but there is a significant amount of time between World War II and World War I for technological advancements and battle strategy and all that other types of future shit. Not to mention, World War I was fucking insane. You have this boom of radio that's helping everyone kind of piece where everyone else is together, and at the same time you have this like wave of people from past wars that don't like new shit, so instead they just throw bodies and bodies at things, and that's why the fucking death count for World War I is so damn high. I mean, Jesus, it wasn't called the Great War for nothing. This is where you learn what kind of a fucking history nerd I am. I think that the first, and in my opinion, most interesting aspect of this film that I want to talk about is the fact that it was shot as if it was in one take. After maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I had realized I didn't really see a cut. I wasn't sure if I didn't remember it. Maybe I saw it and I thought nothing of it, because most films are shot with that type of continuity. But then I started to actually pay attention. I noticed no cuts, not one that I could fucking see. My first viewing of the film, I didn't know that that's how it was purposely shot. I thought they had a really good fucking run of no cuts at all. I felt like I was watching a pitcher throw a no-hitter. Inning after inning, like, it's still fucking going. Seriously, that's amazing. And then I started to not be stupid, and I realized it's impossible to film it the way that they're filming it, the way they're going through specific locations, and just in general, the way the camera moves through space. And clearly there were cuts, so the game became try and spot the hidden cut. Every side swipe of a soldier running across the screen, or every pan behind a tank, had me in my head going, I bet that was one of them. The only other film that I could think of at the time that was shot to make it look like it was in one take is Alejandro Inarritu's... Oh, Jesus, I fucked that name up. Hold on. Alejandro Inarritu. Jesus!
Alejandro González Iñárritu.
Thank you. Birdman, directed by Alejandro González Iñárritu, was shot to look like it was all in one take, but the whole aesthetic of that film is that everything is a dream. Everything is made up, everything is pretend, and Michael Keaton's character is crazy. But this film is about a several-mile walk from one point to another. By the end of it, I was burnt out, and I didn't even go on it with them. I didn't even actually walk at all. I was sitting the whole time, and by then I was like, geez, I need to fucking take a nap. I think it's a super special quality for a film to have, to almost force the audience to feel as exhausted as the main characters are. Feels like you're in the trenches with them, immersed in this terrible chain of events. And I think that also adds to the film's sense of time. What is a long journey feels like a long fucking journey because you're there right next to them. Now apparently Sam Mendes was influenced by his grandfather's own World War I stories when he made the film. And obviously, when you make a movie in Hollywood, there's gonna be times where they have to take fictional liberties, because in the end, when is it ever really based on a true story? The point is, some of this shit had to have actually happened. When you watch a movie, you see it and you're like, wow, that's fucking wild. I can't imagine that. But when you watch something like this, and there are these real little moments in time that people talk about, there's a whole other layer of depth to them. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was inspired by his grandfather's stories before my first viewing. I found out afterwards, and now for my second viewing, I'm watching it and I'm like, that little interaction had to have actually happened, or that specific thing that he did had to really happen, because it's just specific enough that it's a detail that otherwise I don't think would need to have been put in. So there's a really like intimate layer to the movie that you kind of don't get from not only other war movies but other movies in general. The entire film, the one thing I kept thinking of that I really couldn't shake was that I felt like I was watching a human version of Lord of the Rings. You have these two guys who are told to go from, point A to point B, and the entire time they're either coming across really dangerous shit or a bunch of people going, you're never gonna fucking make it. One thing I'm constantly quoted as saying is that there are never ever gonna be movies like the Lord of the Rings trilogy again. And that's just because of the grand feel that they had. You watch it, they filmed them all also back to back, so you watch something like that, and by the end of it, you're like, holy shit, I went on this journey. And that doesn't happen anymore. But you have it with 1917. This 2 hour sliver feels like, oh my god, what a feeling. Like, you go through this whole goddamn thing, and by the end of it, it really just feels really good. It's a feeling that you don't get from movies anymore. Or, specific movies. Cinematographer Roger Deakins, who's also worked on films like No Country for Old Men and Blade Runner 2049, two films, by the way, that heavily rely on the fact that the scenery and the setting of the films are basically characters, made it so you couldn't look away from this movie. It's very easy to mess up a movie where you're following two guys from here to there. But I think that Deakins manipulated the lighting and the visuals on camera and the movement of the camera in a way that you didn't feel like you were being dragged along with them. You were more alongside them, being like, what the fuck's happening next? There are these whole sequences that are full of such great setting manipulation. The story almost follows itself down this path where it's so seamless and constantly moving. And the fact that it's in all exterior settings, or mostly exterior settings, I think has to do with that. A lot of movies you go from one room to another. In this movie you're going from one giant field to the smallest of corridors of trenches, and then you're going back out to a field, and then suddenly there's a danger in the sky or there's a danger underground. I think that's what helps the movie stand out. The score, composed by Thomas Newman, is as triumphant as it is anxiety-inducing. We're already told they have to be there by the next morning or else the attack will go off and everyone's gonna fucking die. And with that as visuals alone, yeah, there's some pressure. With the score kind of on the back of that, pressing down constantly, there's a whole other layer of like intense internal fear that it's like they have to fucking make it or else everyone's fucked. It also does that thing that I'm a really big fan of that actually Stanley Kubrick does a lot, where the music will fucking swell and visuals will be nothing. There will be nothing happening, no explosion, no new introduction of anybody. Just the music being like, fucking here we go, but nothing's happening. And it's just to fuck with audience expectations, and I fucking love that. In The Shining, that happens all the time. Danny turns a corner on his big wheel, nothing there, but you hear a fucking gong go off, just so that the audience can be like, holy shit, there could have been something there. The film is full of moments that, if you're lucky enough to actually pick up on them and focus on them, it makes the world a whole lot more real. And speaking of real, the danger and violence depicted in the film is unbearably realistic. And I think that has to do with the fact that a lot of it's done practically. Sure, the computer-generated effects could have easily done everything like that. But when the explosion that you see is real, and you know for a fact that it's real, and you see debris fly everywhere, and you see actors react to a fucking explosion next to them in real time, it makes the violence so much more visceral, and you almost commit more, like, emotionally to what's happening. My whole thing with CGI is that if I can't tell that what's on screen is being computer generated and it's not a dinosaur or a fucking transformer, then that's the best way to use CGI. The best response you want from CGI is, I don't know if that was computer generated or not, or real. At least I think so. Chapman and McKay also kind of brought to screen a relationship that you can only kind of make in a war. And it's a very human relationship, and their performances are very real, and I can't help but empathize with them. The blind courage fueled by paralyzing fear is something that I think everyone has experienced once in their lives, so it's really easy to connect, even though I've never had a fucking explosion happen by me. Overall, walking out of the theater, I felt a strange sense of like calm and sedation. Is that a word, sedation? That can only come from a movie like this, a movie this exhilarating that you almost, in a sense, experience. You know, it's more than watching it, you're there. And after watching this movie twice now, I can fully get behind all the hype I've seen. From internet reviews to all the Golden Globes, and like insanity, to all this Academy Award shit that it's getting. It's just made, I mean, who gives a shit about awards? But it's just made this award season so much more like locked. And that is my review of 1917. No rating, no fucking out of 10, 5 stars, or what's the other one? Letter grade. This is all you're getting. What did you think of the movie? Comment below. Because I really liked the movie. I really, really did. And I want to know what you liked about it. Or what you didn't like. Go the fuck ahead. Why not? Alright? See you next time. I guess the finger guns is going to be my thing.